So at this point, you learned about some crucial HTMX features and attributes which you can add to send and configure requests. But of course, at this point, we only had a look at loading data. But what about submitting data? Well, for that, I prepared an adjusted version of this demo application, and attached you find my adjusted app.js file. And you can and should simply replace yours with that. And that file gives you almost exactly the same page, but instead of giving you this Learn More button that loads all those items, the items are rendered right from the start, and there is an extra form above that list. And that extra info route, which we added before, doesn't exist anymore. Therefore, if you load this page, you'll get this website here. And now we have this form where I also want to handle the form submission with HTMX. So how can we handle form submissions with HTMX? Well, just as we had this hxGet attribute for triggering GET requests when an element was clicked, we have an hx-post attribute, which we can add to an element to submit a post request. And typically, when submitting form data, you want to send a post request. That's why I'm using this attribute here now. I also want to mention right away and emphasize that you're not limited to using hxPost on forms. You can use it on any element. Any element in your page can trigger a post request, but forms, of course, are the perfect fit because the idea behind forms is to gather data that should be submitted. So we can add hxPost on that form, and it will then automatically be triggered when that form is submitted, which will happen when that button is clicked. That's how forms work. Now we could, of course, add hxTrigger and change that trigger, for example, to submit the form whenever we click on it. So whenever we click anywhere in the form, but that's of course not what I want here. I just want to emphasize that we could change that trigger and that the default trigger is different from what we had before with hxGet, and it's not different because we're using hxPost, but it's different. It's the submit event because we're using hxPost on the form. If I were using hxPost on some button like this, then it would still be a click event that triggers this post request. So it's not the attribute that dictates which trigger triggers the request, but instead the element on which you use it. Now here I want to use hxPost on the form to send a post request whenever the form is submitted, and therefore, of course, we must add a value to this attribute and define the path to which this post request should be sent. And here we could send it to /nothing if we want to, or to /node, whatever you want. Since we're the person working on the backend, we can then add the appropriate route. And that's indeed what we'll do now as a next step. I want to add a route that handles post requests to /node on that server here.